October 3rd. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts. We read all of the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. As you can tell, it is just me today. Moshe is not feeling well, so he's taking a little time to get better. Also want to just wish our Jewish listeners a very happy and sweet new year. And with that, let's get to the news. Here are the headlines. The death toll from Hurricane Helene has now climbed to 182, with hundreds of more people still missing. President Biden did an aerial tour of the region on Wednesday and vowed more federal help. To the Middle East, all eyes on Israel and how it will respond to Iran's missile barrage, what President Biden said about Israel striking Iran's nuclear facilities. To politics, it is the day after the VP debate. So who won? Voters weigh in on how J.D. Vance and Tim Walz performed. California banning chemicals in many food and drink products from being served at its public schools. What is on the list and when it will take effect? To business news, imagine checking your account balance, knowing that there's money in there, and seeing a big fat zero. Well, that is what happened to some Bank of America customers on Wednesday. What is behind it? And speaking of money, Elon Musk's X, now worth about a fifth of what he paid for it. Plus, I will do my best with On This Day in History. Okay, let's start with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. The death toll has now climbed to 182. That makes it the second deadliest hurricane to hit the mainland United States in the last 55 years. Only Katrina back in 2005 was worse, at least again in the past 50 years. I should mention 600 people, though, are still unaccounted for, and the search for survivors continues. President Biden has deployed 1,000 troops to help with the recovery efforts. They're going to be helping to deliver food, water, and other critical commodities to communities that are impacted by the storm. More than 4,800 federal personnel have already been deployed to states to help with their response. On Wednesday, he took an aerial tour of the damage. The roads, of course, on the ground, in many cases, are still impassable. From the skies, the president could see the utter devastation, that storm leaving a 500-mile path of destruction. In the Carolinas, many people still don't have electricity, running water, or cell service. So that means it's really difficult for people in the area to communicate with their loved ones and just figure out where they can get necessities like water and gas. Early Wednesday, the president had visited Greenville, South Carolina, as crews tried to restore power there. Greenville's about 60 miles south of Asheville, North Carolina, and that is where some of the worst of the damage is. President Biden has said Congress might need to return to Washington to pass some supplemental emergency funding to help with the federal response to the disaster. House Speaker Mike Johnson, though, telling Fox News that it might not happen until after Election Day. All members of the House are up for re-election this year, and they are currently in their districts campaigning. All right, now to the Middle East. Israel is vowing to retaliate against Iran for its unprecedented ballistic missile attack on Tuesday. So reporters asked President Biden if the U.S. supports Israel attacking Iranian nuclear facilities. The president at Joint Base Andrews said no.
The answer is no. I think there's things. We'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do, but all seven of us agree that they have a right to respond, that they should respond and enforce it.
So in case you couldn't really hear, because the sound I know was not great, Biden said Israel has a right to respond to Iran's missile attack, quote, in proportion, but that he would not support an Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear sites. The 7 countries that he mentioned, that's the members of the G7. So you're talking Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the UK, the United States, and Italy, which is a rotating member. The G7 had an emergency call on Wednesday and is still pushing for a diplomatic solution, saying that that is still possible. Biden also says they're working on new sanctions against Iran following its missile attack. Now, back to the idea of targeting nuclear facilities, which Iran denies having a nuclear weapons program. There are reports from the U.S. government that show Iran is inching much closer to having a nuclear weapon. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett wrote on X that now is the time for Israel to destroy Iran's nuclear program, saying that we must, quote, remove this terrible threat to our children's future. Iran has vowed to wipe Israel off the map, but whether Israel can and will strike the nuclear facilities without U.S. support, not clear. There are some other options. Some analysts say that Israel could target Iran's oil facilities, so that would be a big blow to Iran's economy, but it would have global consequences and impact oil prices around the world, which have already spiked. And it is not necessarily something that the Biden administration would be in favor of ahead of the election. Israel also could choose a lesser response. Israel only saying that it will respond quickly and significantly, but reportedly is still weighing all of its options. But at least as of this recording on Wednesday evening, is reportedly still weighing all of its options. Sources tell USA Today that the timing of any Israeli strike hasn't been decided, but it's expected to be soon and would not necessarily wait for the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah to finish. That holiday started at sundown on Wednesday and it runs until sundown on Friday. Also want to mention 8 Israeli soldiers were killed on the second day of the ground invasion into Lebanon. It clearly shows the dangers of troops crossing into Hezbollah territory, and that Hezbollah, despite Israel taking out much of its leadership, is still a robust force. Sticking with Lebanon, the State Department says about 100 American citizens and family members have left Lebanon. Thousands of other Lebanese are fleeing to Syria. Lebanon's health ministry says that Israeli strikes have killed over 1,000 people in Lebanon over the past 2 weeks. I want to note that their health ministry does not distinguish between Hezbollah fighters and civilians, although they do say about a quarter of those killed are women and children. One thing that we mentioned on yesterday's podcast, at about the same time that Iran was firing missiles at Israel, there was a deadly terror attack. It was unclear if it was connected in any way to the missile barrage, but on Wednesday, Hamas's military wing claimed responsibility for the killing of the 7 Israelis in Jaffa. As for the latest developments in the region, it is all moving extremely quickly, so definitely check out the Mo News Instagram feed for the latest between now and tomorrow's podcast. Time now for the speed read. Let's start with politics from CBS News. It is the day after the vice presidential debate. So who won in the first and likely only vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance? Voters who watched Tuesday night said that it was an almost even match, and an overwhelming majority felt that the tone of the debate was positive. Immediately following the debate, CBS News surveyed voters around the country who reported watching it in order to get their reaction. 42% of debate watchers said that Vance won. 41% thought that Walz was the winner. 17% called the debate a tie. Debate watchers were a bit more Democratic in their party affiliation than voters nationwide. Both candidates sounded reasonable on Tuesday night to majorities of debate watchers rather than, quote, extreme. And both candidates drew majorities saying that they are prepared to be U.S. president should that become necessary. Most partisans felt that only their party's VP nominee is prepared, while most independents said that both are. The candidates were seen as even on some of the issues that came up at the debate, including the economy and the conflict in the Middle East. Walz was seen as better at talking about healthcare and abortion. Vance had the edge when it came to immigration. And both candidates improved their overall image with voters from before the debate. More debate watchers had a net negative view of Vance before the debate, but afterward, slightly more had a favorable view of him than an unfavorable one. And as Moshe mentioned last night, it seems like the winner on Tuesday was civility. And based on the reactions that we have seen from the Mo News community, the reactions that I've gotten on my own Instagram feed, it looks like everyone is just yearning for more civil discourse when it comes to our politics. And for the most part, that is what we got on Tuesday night. From CNN, California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed into law a bill that bans the use of red dye number 40 and 5 other chemicals from use in foods served at public schools. The state is the first in the country to pass a law forbidding the use of the ingredients that are found in some popular cereals, ice creams, drinks, candy, ice pops, cheese-flavored chips, jellies, and more. The law will be enacted on December 31st, 2027. It is known as the California School Food Safety Act. So it bans school districts, county superintendents of schools, or charter schools with grades kindergarten through 12th from offering foods or beverages that contain red dye number 40, yellow dyes number 5 and 6, blue dyes number 1 and 2, and green dye number 3. Some of these dyes are found in some but not all products under the Cheetos, Doritos, Skittles, M&M's, Starburst, Gatorade, Mountain Dew, Captain Crunch, and Ruffles brands. California is home to the largest public school system in the country with more than 6.3 million students and 10,000 schools. So, what happens there could have an impact on the rest of the country. The bill stems from concerns that these dyes would harm children's ability to learn. They've been linked to behavioral difficulties and decreased attention among kids. That's according to a study done in 2021 by the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. So it begs the question, why hasn't the federal government banned these ingredients? Well, the FDA says it has reviewed the research on the effects of color additives on children's behavior, including the literature review that's cited in this bill. They say the totality of scientific evidence shows that most children have no adverse effects when consuming food that contains color additives, but there is some evidence that suggests certain children could be sensitive to them. The agency says it will continue to look at the data and the emerging science. On the other side, though, you've got the Consumer Brands Association, which represents more than 1,700 brands. They said in a statement in August that, quote, it's unfortunate that scientifically proven safe ingredients have been demonized for the purpose of advancing a political agenda. They say the passage of the bill could cost schools and families money, limit choice and access, and create consumer confusion. But Governor Newsom's decision does put the U.S. food environment more in alignment with that of the European Union, where products like these dyes are required to have a warning label saying that they could harm young people. Okay, also from CNN in business news, Bank of America customers report having trouble accessing their bank accounts on Wednesday. Reports about a problem at Bank of America spiked at about 12:45 p.m. Eastern on Down Detector, which collects data on outages. Some customers complained that they couldn't see their account balances, and some who could access their accounts were startled when they saw zero balances. Bank of America has acknowledged the issue. They call it a glitch, and they say they are working to resolve it. And sticking with business news from Forbes, Elon Musk's X is worth a little bit more than 1/5 of the $44 billion that he paid to acquire the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, the latest in a series of valuation cuts by Fidelity since Musk took it over in 2022. So Fidelity's stake in X is now worth about $4.19 million. That is an estimate that would value X at $9.4 billion, according to recent disclosures from Fidelity. Musk is still the wealthiest person in the world. He has a fortune valued at about $269.8 billion. So he is likely not losing any sleep over this. Musk purchased what was then Twitter in October of 22 following a lengthy transaction process, and that included the company suing Musk after he tried to back out of that $44 billion offer. The company's revenue dropped by about 50% after his buyout because of a massive decline in advertising. While rebranding Twitter as X, Musk announced a series of changes to the platform. There's now a premium subscription service that grants users verification badges and the ability to edit posts. It also prioritized rankings in conversations and search. But those changes have resulted in backlash from users who claim that parody accounts can now trick users by paying for verification. So again, those numbers, he bought the platform for $44 billion, and it is now worth an estimated $9.4 billion. All right, it is Thursday, October 3rd, time for On This Day in History. On this day in 1955, the first edition of the Guinness Book of Records is published in Great Britain. It actually started as a record book to settle friendly disagreements at pubs, and it was given away for free to promote the Guinness brand. On this day in 1990, West Germany and East Germany ended 45 years of Cold War division, and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev agreed to a unified Germany within NATO. On this day in 1995, in one of the most sensational trials in U.S. history, a jury in Los Angeles found O.J. Simpson not guilty of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. I still remember where I was when that verdict was read, in the Jericho High School cafeteria. They actually wheeled in a TV so we could watch. And some music history on this day in 2003, School of Rock, starring Jack Black, premiered in theaters. It grossed $131 million worldwide on a $35 million budget. All right, that does it for me. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Review us in the App Store. Moshe, if you are listening, I hope that you feel better. And again, a very happy new year to our Jewish listeners. Hopefully the year 5785 will be more peaceful than the last one.